we know, look, Ginny Thomas is not just some random person sharing election memes on social media. She is the spouse of a Supreme Court justice. She played an active role in the plot to overturn President Biden's election victory. Peter, how did we get to the point where someone so detached from reality had that kind of access to the West Wing?
Well, I mean, keep in mind, the person who actually occupied the Oval Office was just as detached from reality, right? I mean, this isn't just somebody who had access to the Oval Office. The person in the Oval Office believed this, or at least certainly espoused these false assertions about the election. But you're right, it's rather remarkable, Ginny Thomas's role in this, because she does have a husband who's on the Supreme Court. She told the investigators as part of this interview this week that she didn't talk about it with Clarence Thomas, which seems obviously quite striking. Every marriage is different. Who knows how that goes? But to be able to separate that kind of activism on the one hand in that whole household with justice who's supposed to remain neutral on the other hand is obviously, interesting, surprising, and perhaps raises a lot of questions.
Barb, we mentioned Congressman Jamie Raskin a moment ago. Here's what he had to say about Ginny Thomas.
It is amazing that you have someone who's married to a Supreme Court justice who is, continues to promote the big lie. But of course, that is her absolute First Amendment right to do so. And anybody can go out and, make an idiot out of themselves by claiming that, the Easter Bunny is real, that Santa Claus is real, and Donald Trump is the real president.
Barb, Ginny's emails show she was involved with the fake elector scheme on the state level. She was also in touch with Trump lawyer John Eastman. How does her testimony help the 1-6 committee in its investigation?
Well, she's absolutely a witness here, regardless of who she's married to and what she believes. The fact that she's communicating with Mark Meadows, who's the chief of staff, and that she's communicating with people who are electors and trying to push them to falsify the certification of the electors in the state makes her a key fact witness. And so I think the questions they asked her, no doubt, related to who else she was talking to, what kinds of efforts she was making to try to change the outcome of the election. And so, people are allowed to believe whatever they want, but they're not allowed to take the law into their own hands. And so I imagine the goal there was to find out what steps she took. And then, the fact that she's married to a Supreme Court justice is not completely irrelevant. No one should target her simply because she's married to Justice Clarence Thomas. But I imagine that one of the reasons she gets so much access is because of who she is married to. And if she is communicating things that reach Clarence Thomas, then I think we need to think about recusal rules for him. For example, there was a case where Donald Trump tried to prevent the National Archives from getting White House communications. Turns out some of those communications were hers. And when the Supreme Court decided that case, every other justice ruled that those documents should be turned over, except for one, Clarence Thomas. And I think it begs the question whether he made his decision based on his concerns that her communications, and maybe even his, would be disclosed. And so I think they really have to watch their lane here to make sure that they're not in the middle of it.
Well, and just to delve into that point a bit more, the Supreme Court already faces a legitimacy crisis after the overturning of Roe v. Wade earlier this year. How can Ginny Thomas's actions further undermine the court, even if, as she claims, she never discussed her post-election activities with her husband, Justice Thomas?
Well, I think it is, one of many factors that are causing this legitimacy crisis with the court, certainly the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and not just because they overturned it, but the way they did so in a case where all the normal factors for overturning precedent were not present, just simply saying it was egregiously wrong. That and then going out and sort of denying that there's a legitimacy crisis. But I think Clarence Thomas's affiliation with his wife and her activity in trying to overturn the election suggests that there can be partisan politics at work in the court. And that just can't be. The court needs to be independent of all politics and making decisions based on facts and law. And so I think that Chief Justice Roberts is the one who really needs to keep his eye on the ball here. And in the right case, maybe needs to push Clarence Thomas to recuse himself in certain kinds of cases involving these issues where his wife's interests are at stake.